It's hard for me to call you they because you we. It's hard for me to call you they because you me. If we talking about the system, we say them. But when we talking about the system, we say them and them. Cause anything that we be feeling, we say twice. And don't say nothing.
To be here at home, to share something about home, it feels like a celebration, like a family reunion. I started this in 2010 when I moved back to Houston from New York, and I saw my grandparents in Third Ward where they were living. They'd lived my entire life, and they were significantly a lot older than I remembered. I was only gone 10 years. But that 10 years, like my grandfather said, well, these are like our last 10 years.
This woman was missing. This woman was missing for 1 year.
When I saw them, they were so much older, and their neighborhood was so much older too. So I went to visit them at their house, and I said, well, where's such and such, and where's, Miss Annie, and where's such and such, and the kids I used to play with, and they're like, well, they moved, or they died, or everything's changing, it's old. And it really struck me to see my grandparents, who I love so much, and their neighborhood and their setting, their surrounding, which I love so much, changing kind of symbiotically at the same rate. It really inspired me to want to capture those moments that seemed like they were fleeting. So I started making kind of a photo documentary, a portrait of my grandfather and my grandmother and their surroundings.
I really miss having a pure eye of the world around me.
In his passing, I saw something else happening as a witness to the space. I saw everything was still him, and how he affected the objects and the place around him. He was still there. I had a challenge and also like a passion to try to describe or capture the essence of him by the absence of him as well. My grandmother helped a lot with her love, so she represented a lot of him in the film for me, and her grief, she held the space for her grief, which actually held the shape of him. It was like an etheric sculpture. That was striking for us to deal with that real life grief during that time. I decided to make a fictional story to go with it, to kind of lighten the mood or try to keep the energy going forward and in both directions. So I made a story about a girl who lost her dog, which I felt was a universal kind of a theme. A girl is looking for her dog. Meanwhile, in real life, an older woman lost her husband. So they're both sharing and passing grief stories on top of each other. That was the first film, Cry of the Third Eye, which has the same title as the trilogy. And that's how it began. And I just decided to take certain photos and still images of locations in the neighborhood that are really dear to me, that I'm like, I always want to remember this part. I always want to archive this part. In case this place changes, I want to have a photo document of this place. And I use those stills in my filmmaking process. You can find the house used to be. Right over there. That's where my house used to be, right here. Right here. My house is right here. And it's gone. There's some other houses. It's gone. There's a track. As soon as they open up. We are dealing like epidemically with like people losing their memory, like Alzheimer's and dementia and things like that. So the very few memories that people can hold on to at the certain time of their life, they're super precious. She can't find her dog because the streets are changing too fast, so she's kind of getting lost at every turn. She can't keep up with the change, so she can't find some of the most precious things or people or beings that are close to her. The first act that was completed in 2011, I had the dream or the intention of creating and developing a fictional story about really following the story of a girl with her dog, really kind of having it animated and accessible to children. I'm really interested in children education and curriculum as an educator myself. So how can we bring these social justice and sometimes kind of really contemporary and socio-political ideas to the vibration and level that children can interact and have their voices heard, because this is their world. So that was my main focus, to kind of making a musical light about gentrification and voicing it, using voiceover, me narrating it, me not being in the frame at all, just behind the scenes.
Honestly, I don't know how the world has transformed around me. I've been focused on me and getting me better, so I honestly don't know how the world has transformed around me.
By the time it came time for me to make Act 2 in 2015, certain things were happening behind the scenes that I could not ignore. So I had deadlines. It was actually like it evolved where the themes of my work were reflecting in my real life, and my real life were pouring over into the themes of my work. So I was running out of time for my deadlines, but I was also being pushed out of my house by the city because of eminent domain and public policies that need correction and need addressing, that I wanted to address. I didn't have time to address because I needed to make a film about a fictional thing. And then they kind of converged where I was like, well, this isn't really fictional. I don't even have to make this story. It's actually happening to me, which I thought I could do. I thought I was more distanced from it at the beginning, but actually it started to shape around me and show me that, like, no, actually you are a part of the frame. We are all a part of the frame and space together. So that enveloping and folding was like mind-blowing for me.
What has transformed in my life mostly is the understanding of the world around me. The good, the bad, the evil, and the beautiful.
My mother would tell me, you know, think about it as a lesson in non-attachment, where I was still really focused on telling a story of grief. But 4 years had passed since my grandfather had passed already, and now by Act 2, my grandmother had passed away too. So I was more seasoned by the sequel in grief. You know, I had another layer, and I was getting rid of, a house was being taken away from me, which is huge. You know, so it was becoming more and more a meditation of non-attachment, which was really balancing out and taking the place of what my initial intention was. Now in Act 3 in 2019, the space between 2015 and now has also been monumental. So it's given me a lot of time to reflect on the phenomenon of the beginning of one of the inspirations of this, my time away from home. My 10 years away from home ended up appearing something like feeling like 25 years when I got home. These last 5 years, to make this last part of the trilogy now and to look at where we were 5 years ago, it looks like, oh my gosh, that could have easily been 15 years already in between. So it's just a shifting, and it's showing me, the process of change is showing me like how malleable time is, how we make time.
Imagine forever without our love. Why my heart won't.
So the main challenge was in Act 2, coming up against the HISD, Houston Independent School District, and the city and the public policy with eminent domain. I really wanted to fight longer to retain the rights to our house, which was owned by my family for a long time. I really wanted to develop that fight, but I didn't have the resources to do that, and I didn't have the time. So that was a real challenge. I had been shifting the narrative behind the camera around so that it didn't include me, and now I had to shift the camera around so that it included me, because that was the narrative of the space.
Can you promise that you'll love me forever and forever and a day, and those days will multiply till forever and will never go away, although the sun will surely set and rise, every day will tell that sun goodbye. Every night, new moonbeams in your eyes, and together we will stay. Can you promise that you'll love me forever and forever and a year, and those years will gently pile up together and eradicate my fears that something oh so heaven-sent as this could one day end as softly as
I was really interested in maintaining the same characters. So I have my lead two actors are a boy and a girl. Tamira Collins plays the young girl, and Jaqueline or Jack Mitchell plays the young boy. And Tamira was my student when we started. Jaqueline was my nephew. And but they grew up, and it was harder to have access to them. Now they're grown-ups, you know, they're like, one's in college, one's going to the Navy, and years are passing in between. So it's not like I'm requiring all their time, but when it's time to film, I'm like, okay, you guys, we're coming back to the story. It's really interesting. That's been kind of challenging and revealing too, to bring them back to a place of memory too. And they're like, oh yeah, that's still going on? Like, to have what is history and what is memory and what is story, and that be something that you can return to, and actually something that is like driving and happening the same time that you're living your life. So they're reminded, like, oh, the story's still going on? Well, what's happening with us in the story now? You know, like two lives. I'm like, well, this is where you are. Now let's all come back together, your real life and the story life. And that's been awesome and challenging, just corralling everybody together in place to continue the story. And so this last film, this last iteration, which has been the most challenging because they're the oldest now and the most independent and the most away from Houston.
So just promise that you'll love me forever, and I promise I will stay.
It's so special and it's so rare, and you know, we see it, it's evident every day, like in our climate, like in our literal social climate, where we live, how we, in our humanity. Houston is where I'm born and raised. It's really important to me. Not everyone has a home that they can return to. I had a home, have a home. I have a home that I could return to after a long time. I have grandparents. I have grandparents that I knew before they died, that I could love. You know, and all of those things are so invaluable to me, in the place of money and, you know, in the center of like a neighborhood that's considered impoverished, that's like the richest thing. And I want to really show the value of what that is, and also to share that with other people. Well, people come to my house, which is now, it's also my set, it's also my grandmother's old house. When people come there and they don't even know that that's the history of this place, but all of this work and all of this life has happened there. I've had a couple of times different people, separate occasions, come in and say, whoa, I just had this overwhelming memory of my grandmother. I don't know her very well, but that happened once. And I was like, really? That's interesting. This is my grandmother's house. And another time someone was walking in, can I use your restroom? A friend I knew. I said, yeah, sure, it's around the corner. And they came out and they were on the ground sobbing and was like, I just need to call my grandmother or something. Two separate occasions. And I think that's worth it to me. And to document that, that's the work that I do in real life. Energetic connections and performance between place and people and our humanity and our earth and us being here. That's what I'm really working on, and keeping that palpable and alive. It's a real thing that moved those people to the ground. If I can translate that in one kind of way that someone can watch it and they don't have to be here to see that, that's my only goal in making films right now.
The life giver, not the chick who trigger drama. And I remember these words from my grandmama. Don't tell me what you can't do. Tell me what you can do. Don't tell me what you can't do. Tell me what you can do.
I hope that the audience is able to access some memory that they weren't able to access before. I hope that it opens some door for them. Whether it's a door that they shut on purpose and they didn't want to open, or whether it's one that they forgot about and just forgot how to get to, I hope that something is open for them that's safe for them to experience. And then on the other side of that door, I hope that my audience is able to create a new memory in the way that they're feeling when they watch this, so that they have a new memory. It might be something that they can't open here, but they can create a new one to then build upon, so that we can have like a more balanced experience that we get to have in life. So I just hope that they get new memories that they can be proud of in their feeling, with their heart. He can't walk, and it's time.
I have enough time if I make time. What is enough?